As Lent is drawing to a close, I find myself struggling to remember how it began. Can you remember what you were thinking on that Wednesday in those last few days of February? Can we remember what we decided to focus on, what we would try to remember each day, what we would try to forgive or forego in honor of that season? I stretch my mind back to New Year's, and I can picture those thoughts more clearly. The start of a new year and a new decade. I can remember the things I had set my mind to do in the coming year, and all the blessings that we were anticipating as a family. But it's harder to remember what I worried about on either of those days. I'm sure that I worried about something, about many things, just as I do every day. But whatever they were has faded in my memory or drifted away, like the leaves of that season past. And Jesus reminded them, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." We could use that assurance now, perhaps more than ever. I've been out walking lately, and it's hard to reconcile the warm weather and the beautiful bloom of spring with the knowledge of the desperate battle that's being fought somewhere over that distant horizon. Because while new leaves are bursting from bare branches, a whole new set of worries have sprung up to replace the ones we lost or forgot along the way. They are the filter, the lens, the curtain through which we watch these days of waiting go past. For the moment, our part in the battle is simply patience and restraint, to stay put in this beautiful piece of creation, to enjoy our time together as a family, and to keep the world at a distance as it struggles to heal. As others go out each day to tend to the fallen, we are here, apart, together, safe but unsure and fearful of what is to come. "Do you now believe?" Jesus replied. "A time is coming, and in fact has come, when you will be scattered, each to your own home." But there's a right time to be afraid, isn't there? A season where fear and worry, caution and prudence serve their purpose. They keep us safe. Because there are real dangers out there, somewhere, even the ones we can't see, maybe especially the ones we can't see. And if so few of the things we worried about ever came to pass, it must have been because of our worry, our fear, our caution, and our care that kept them away from us, didn't they? As we contemplate this new thing that surrounds us, that we didn't even know we should fear, I begin to wonder. Because I thought that all of that worry must have been for something, right? It must have kept us safe, kept the danger from our door, acted as defense against the bad things that never touched us and passed us by. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. That was what Jesus had gathered his friends to celebrate that final supper together. The remembrance of salvation when danger came upon the world. The blessing upon each door where families were kept intact and untouched, as so many others were not spared. Inside there was warmth and food, light and wine, bread and fellowship. There were hopes and plans and preparations. There was remembrance and thanksgiving and a new covenant. And he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and gave it to them, saying, "This is my body given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after the supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." If those gathered there were worried, Still, none of them could guess the events that were coming. They argued about who was next in importance. They strove to be first in Jesus' eyes in declaring their loyalty, while being blind to what loyalty would mean in the hours to come, as betrayal sat silently beside them, preparing to sweep away every plan that they ever held. Because Jesus knew what was coming, he looked through the empty plans and the vanity of their worries, even past the coming betrayal, and he taught them. He lifted them. He realigned their priorities and prepared them for the season to come, even as he humbled himself by washing their feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. In those final hours before the world was changed forever, still he was teaching, giving thanks, and setting the example. Even as he knew every detail of what was to come, what real danger and suffering was waiting and moving, even then, out there in the darkness, beyond those closed doors. Because he knew they would need it. Because he knew that soon they would be overwhelmed with fear and worry and trouble. That things they had not yet seen would need to be confronted, even as most of the things they worried about would never come to pass. That no doors could hold back the dangers of the world outside, or contain the truth that was about to be revealed. If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. For me, the story of Easter is as much about that room as it is about the tomb. I can't help thinking that this season of Lent will forever change how much we understand about its purpose. Because as much as we strove to understand Lent or Passover, it would always be hard for it to really touch us in the lives that we led before. Most of us didn't know what it was like to pray that unseen death would pass our door, even as it took so many around us. We might have felt guilty about how much time we spent watching sports, or felt the need to focus less on our work life in order to spend more time with our family. Maybe we regretted not spending more time around the kitchen table, sharing a meal, but not quite enough to really change it. Perhaps we were right to complain about all the things our children were being taught, and fret about the important things that no longer were. It was hard to make time to sit down beside them and to share those lessons ourselves. There was never enough time. There were always too many other things to worry about. If we had time for nothing else, somehow there always seemed to be time to worry. If we didn't admit it before the need to shelter in place made it real, we had been living in these confined spaces all along. We had shut so many doors and guarded them so closely that we forgot that the doors were really even there any longer. And one by one, we found reasons why this or that part of the world wasn't worth the risk, and took steps to keep it outside of our lives. And so we walked by them each day, but never stopped to consider if they were actually keeping something dangerous out, or really just keeping us in. What would it take to help us to know the difference? Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. What if the covenant, the lessons, and the example Jesus offered that night were meant for us as much as they were for those gathered around the table? My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me, and I am in you. Consider that the lesson of Easter and Holy Week wasn't just about the tomb or that locked room, or the fear and doubt that left those disciples feeling trapped, cut off, and helpless. Because the danger was real, but so was the promise. Now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. If we couldn't appreciate before the disciples' experience of having their world turned upside down and the need to isolate themselves as danger passed by their doors each day, can we now embrace the same example that Jesus gave them to see them through it? Are we able to set aside old arguments, lay down empty worries, and make preparation to remember and celebrate God's protection for His faithful? When we take the example of service that Jesus offered, accept the offer of communion that connects each one of us back to those shared moments of peace and reassurance. In the face of our greatest fear, can we do as Christ did and give ourselves over to prayer instead of worry, and embrace a willingness to embrace God's plan as a source of strength? Can we embrace each other as Jesus asked, and become what He had intended? A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Will we emerge from that locked room in the days to come to find that the world is no less dangerous, but that we have been transformed in the process of having encountered the risen Christ along the way? Ask and you will receive, and your joy will be complete. Amen.